So Stephanie, it seems to me that Recollective Orchestra is one of music's best kept secrets. There isn't, I think this concert that's coming up is a great opportunity for the public at large to become more aware. What have you seen in the biggest changes of the public's awareness over the 4 years since the orchestra was founded?
Um, I think honestly, people have been maybe a bit more inquisitive about what diversity really means in American orchestras specifically. There have been numerous conversations about, diversity, equity, inclusion, and all the conferences, all the panels, all the discussions. And, seemingly, it just, for me personally, it just seems to be a very, very circular conversation about how to go about finding a solution and how to start, you know, moving the needle and really making real change happen. Um, so I think that really has jump-started a lot of maybe difficult conversations. Um, but I mean, I don't know that it has been as transformative in the way that I think it really could be if everyone could really see it. It's one thing to hear about it and to talk about it, and it's another thing to witness it and to experience it.
Right. Well, I would assume that by virtue of being able to play to 17,500 people at the Hollywood Bowl and a worldwide audience on CNN,
Yeah,
that becomes tangible, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are your hopes for the message that the audience will receive and the awareness that will be built vis-a-vis this Juneteenth concert?
I mean, I think the awareness is that, for starters, Black classically trained musicians have been here for a very, very long time. We've been working in the traditional classical space in the performing arts sector for a very long time. We've been graduating from the top music schools and conservatories for a very long time. So this notion that, seemingly no one can seem to find all of these magical Black people is just, I mean, it's tiresome. I think a lot of us are just kind of tired of the conversation. And there's a lot of ground to cover as far as the diversity aspect and really making sure that we're creating truly equitable workspaces. Um, and for me, of course, I think there's something really valuable about building this space for us, for Black musicians, and also to inspire the next generation of creatives to say, hey, you can do something different too. And it might not everyone may understand your vision. Not everyone may be quick to, you know, uh, jump on for said vision or sign on for said vision. But yes, you have value, and I think that's something that everyone needs to truly feel, and not just a select few. And so I think shaping that perspective and that narrative, and not just for Black musicians, although I think that this is really important for us and for our community to see it as well. Is this a viable option for my kids to pursue? Will my kids be able to support themselves financially and make a true career out of this that is fulfilling and rewarding? And these are questions that I think any parent would have, so
Right. Well, the Canon Masons cannot be the only people that future musicians look at as
absolutely.
representative.
But I think it's really, really important that, we are able to see that,
Of
and there
course.
are so many more of us out here, and who have had that formal training and who have, the support of our families and of our communities and things like that. And um, there's just so many more people who can't even fit on the stage at the bowl. There's so many of us that could very easily be there. and share that space. So I think, again, I think it's just really, I feel like I'm really, really talked out. I think there's been so many conversations and discussions and all the dialoguing, and I just feel like over dialoguing about certain things just really delay real action. So I think this is a way of just saying, hey, receipts only. Like
Right.
we're actually doing the work. I'm tired of talking about doing the work. We're doing the work.
Well, there's that old adage that if you want something done, do it yourself. It seems to me that that's on a certain level what you've done here.
In a way, absolutely. I mean, like I'd be remiss not to mention, other organizations who have been founded before the Recollective Orchestra. And, you have Gateways Festival, you have the Color Music Festival, you have, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank here. It's a group in Atlanta.
It's funny because as you were saying that, I go, she's trying to come up with the name of the group in Atlanta.
Yes, I can't. I'm so sorry. Something noir. I think Jason Akeem is at the head of that, and then you have like Soulful Symphony and obviously the work of the Sphinx organization, which isn't necessarily all Black, but has certainly employed and enhanced the careers of many Black professional classical musicians and elevated elevated the visibility. So to say we're not the only ones doing the work, and that's not the message that I want to come across. Now, what makes us a little bit different is we don't necessarily focus on the traditional classical repertoire. Absolutely, can we play it? Absolutely, surely we can. But I think that there's something to be said about the notion of what Black music is, and also the versatility of what it means to be a musician in 2022 as well, and the things that we really enjoy and the types of collaborations that we really enjoy. And I don't know, I think that there's this kind of sentiment about that obviously we know that there is a sense of elitism in the classical music industry, and what is highbrow art and what is lowbrow art. And I just think at this stage, so many of us, and I'm not just talking about Black musicians, but artists, creatives, are just tired of living in a box. We want to create art that we love, that we're inspired by, collaborate with people and artists that we are inspired by. And I think that in turn inspires everyone else. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's the evolution of the form as well. I mean, when Stravinsky came out with Rite of Spring, that was scandalous, and people rioted and things like that. So the inevitable progression of any given art form is got to be subject to change and innovation.
Sure. And we have to be ready for those who may not see it or deem it their taste or appropriate for their standards, and be okay with that and keep going. You know what I mean? Especially because I think for me personally, and a lot of my colleagues and a lot of creatives that I hold in very high regard and who inspire me, they create art that they are really passionate about and they love, and move forward in that way. And there's far less concern about whether or not the critics are going to latch on or not. You know what I mean? And I think what's really interesting is I've noticed that when people move forward in that way, kind of unapologetically, eventually people jump on board. Because it's really hard. It's hard to get behind someone who can't get behind themselves.
Right, of course. Of course. Now, the last study I saw about the percentage of Black musicians in American orchestras came out this year you were founded. And it said that Blacks make up only 1.8% of orchestras nationwide. Has that needle moved at all in those 4 years?
I mean, if it has, it's been so minimal. I mean, I would actually be I'm doubtful. I mean, I can't say that I've ran the numbers to say with certainty that it has moved to 1.85%. I don't know that for sure, but it's a very slow train. It's a very, very slow train. And I think that what we're doing is we are challenging the culture of the American orchestra, from the executive administration down, and a lot of times, and these are conversations that I've had with colleagues of mine, is that we typically will have a certain what's the word, a certain directive, right, that's passed down from the executive level, and they want to implement certain hiring strategies, et cetera, and the musicians themselves are not interested in complying. And when you have tenure, this can create a very difficult situation. And it can be very difficult to mediate certain, workplace tensions. And I think that there have been many, many musicians who have experienced working in a hostile work environment with nowhere really to turn. And I mean, we kind of saw what that looked like when we're talking about sexual harassment. When you're one of one in, in a larger organization, it can be very, very difficult. So these are conversations that have to be had to create safer and more equitable workspaces for everybody. This is not just talking about Black musicians. This could be transgender musicians, people who, other minorities like South Pacific Islander, and it's not just it's not just specific to Black musicians, although I think that there is a very unique experience and through line in this country in general, that shapes people's perspectives. It shapes certain narratives, and that affects us in the workplace, undoubtedly.
So how much do you think a change in the diversity of management is required for these changes to take place on stages and amongst the personnel that make up an orchestra?
Oh, that's a great question. I really feel like there has to be an overhaul of like the structure itself. I don't think it's just a matter of like remove this one person and remove this one person. I think that you really need to overhaul the structure because, again, we see problems from the top down, right? And everywhere in between. So, if are there checks and balances with the personnel manager and how they're interfacing with the musicians? And what are the protocols for certain instances that, that people are reporting, and it's he said versus she said, or he said versus he said, or she said versus she, you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, so what is the remedy? And I think that that's really where we're going to start seeing real changes happen. Yes, hiring strategy and all of that stuff matters as well. And then we have the pipeline question talking about like what's going on at the music school and conservatory level and pre-college and access and resources. I mean, we have to really like overhaul the system. But when we're really looking, I think at the orchestra, at the professional level, I think that there certainly needs to be, we need to address what's going on structurally. And part of that is what's going on at the leadership level and on down to the musician level,
So would a good problem for Recollective Orchestra be that orchestras around the country start poaching you?
Potentially, sure. I mean, the thing is, so many of the musicians in our orchestra are tenured professionals in, many of the top American orchestras. So, sure. I mean, that would be fantastic. Should that be what, musicians aspire to do? I mean, we have a great mix of, professional full-time orchestral players who are tenured, and you have, you know, some freelance players, some people who, you know, tour and work in mainstream music forms and television and film scoring. And so it's like, I think having this mix of experience and to be able to collaborate in that way, what's really interesting is to see that so many of us, like, we've all graduated from a lot of the same schools, you know, and so either due to a complete lockout of certain professional opportunities and really just saying, hey, I'm going to go where I'm valued, we've kind of taken different pathways. And it's so nice to see how we're able to converge and have these conversations. Because I think that that's really what helps problem solve and when you have these kind of diverse perspectives, because when everyone kind of has the same lens and the same experience, um you're gonna see, you're gonna have, we all have um not blinders, we all have blind spots, we all have blind spots, right? And so I think having this diversity of perspective helps to address these various blind spots.
Well, and
um,
also it provides an education opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately, I think, what we kind of say in these panels and in these conversations that isn't necessarily happening in real time. That's something I certainly would love to see more of.
Right. Well, the beautiful thing is when you have experienced and relative, newcomers combining together, it's inevitable that lessons are learned along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, without question.
Yeah.
Without
So,
question, yes.
so over the course of the 4 years of Recollective Orchestra, have you discovered far more musicians than you thought were around, and have some of those discoveries led to opportunities for people to join Recollective?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I think that one thing that I always remind myself is there's like a graduating class of ready, willing, and able um, music school graduates, conservatory graduates that want to work, you know, and are looking for these kinds of opportunities. I remember graduating and, you know, working with Soulful Symphony, or, you know, playing in Sphinx Symphony Orchestra, or, you know, participating in the Gateways Music Festival. And that was so rewarding for me because I got to interface with and work with all of these other like musicians who had been doing this professionally for much longer than I had. And it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? So I think being able to make that connection is important. And that's something that you know, Matt Jones, who is one of the co-founders, he and I co-founded this orchestra together, talk about doing all the time. I think that there's certainly something to be said about um, being able to impart this experience and to provide opportunity and to kind of like help shape readiness in a way. Because I like, so it's funny because I talked to a couple of my friends, and you know, being that I work very often in television and film scoring, I don't necessarily recall learning how to work to a click track. Like, yes, you practice to a metronome in your practice room and things like that, but working professionally and executing to a click on it, like on a daily basis, is very different than performing live with a conductor. And so there's certain things that, you know, some of these kids coming out of these graduating out of these schools haven't necessarily experienced before. Some may have, but many haven't. And so being able to help shape their perspective on career options is really important. There's still a lot of conversations that are not being had at these traditional music schools. I think that some schools are just now kind of coming around to entrepreneurship and addressing that in a real way that wasn't really present when I was in school. And the economy has changed. You know, the industry has changed. The way that technology has impacted the industry undoubtedly has changed, you know? And I think being able to allow them to see that and learn in real time is important, because there's one thing to study it and to talk about it, you know, in theory, and it's another thing to experience it and to learn firsthand, where it's like, oh, this is what that looks like and this is what I need to do this a certain way. So absolutely. I love making sure, and we kind of inform each other. We have a lot of our musicians teach, you know, so they hold faculty positions at various schools, universities. Um, some of them have their own festivals and performing arts organizations. So we try to keep each other kind of informed, and yeah, it's great. And if I know of a young person who's looking for an opportunity, or, you know, whether it be needing a teacher or, you know, wanting to like make sure that they can get into a certain festival, these are the ways, I mean, I would say typically the ways that any teacher, right, would be able to communicate with their colleagues to say, hey, I have this really promising student, you know, I told them to email you, reach out to you. So that's what we do. And I think that it's really important that these Black students feel supported, because oftentimes it has been my personal experience, and also has been communicated to me by lots of other young people, that they don't necessarily feel supported. So that's something that we want to provide as
Right.
best we can.
Well, and according to your website, part of the one other aspect of your mission is to challenge traditional orchestras through a celebration of Black music. And when you see orchestras around the country starting to embrace William Grant Still or Florence Price, does that feel like a good first step, or just an easy way of sort of taking care of an issue that's hot at the moment?
You got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. I mean, again, like there's a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of work to do. So it's important to take the first step and to continue taking steps. Now, what I'm very, very minimally impressed by is, you know, the programming of Black composers for February. That is very lazy and just not really innovative. I think it's great, you know, but you know, it's why haven't these composers shown up throughout your performance season? You know, and again, it's like without saying it verbally, you're making a statement with your organization by doing that.
And there are far more than just 2 or 3 composers.
Oh, so many more,
Right.
so many more, and there's so many talented young composers that would just, you know, I mean, being able to commission, you know, would be eager to write a commission, you know, and you got to give people their flowers while while they can enjoy them, you know. I think it's great that you know, we've really started to shine more light on Florence Price, because as we well know, female composers in the classical canon are still very few and far between. I mean, it's shockingly so. Um, but you know, she's not around to enjoy this level of performance of her work. You know what I mean? So, and there are a lot of really young composers that are doing incredible work. So I would just, you know, again, I think that it's really, really important to make sure for us that we are just, you know, performing works that we are really inspired by. It is not necessarily my thought that, you know, these like more traditional, like longstanding works hold no value. Like that's certainly not what we're saying, but like, and I love the William Grant Still Afro-American Symphony, but how many times are we going to perform that? Is there nothing else? You know, there's just so many fantastic works, and I hope that organizations will really challenge themselves to be a little more innovative.
It's interesting. I just saw that, the first symphony was just performed by the LA Phil this past weekend. And I took a friend of mine with whom I used to share season tickets. And he
Yeah.
goes, oh, I didn't really like that much. It sounded a lot like Porgy and Bess. And I said, which came first?
But which is performed more.
Of course. Of course.
But again, fantastic piece.
Right.
Not saying to not perform it. I just, I eagerly await the day when I can really look at a top 10 orchestras performance calendar and be wowed. That hasn't happened in a very long time for me personally. And these are brilliant orchestras with brilliant players. I just, I really want to be inspired by the programming again.
Well, it'd be nice if, I think it's great that Tashawn Sori is getting as much attention as he is.
Agreed.
I would love to see Catherine Bostic get more attention.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people out there who are making great music right now.
Yeah.
So it leads. So who are the artists, musicians, composers that you most want to work with at this point?
Well, we would love to work with Tyshawn Sori. That's so funny because his name came up a few times. So many of the musicians in our orchestra also write music. So, we could kind of go down the roster. I don't want to give away too much about, the upcoming performance, but, Janina Norpath is a great composer, and Allison Loggins Hall is a fantastic composer, both of whom are in our ensemble. I think that Stefan Smith, also fantastic composer. And I'm really excited to be able to maybe direct attention and shine some light on some really, really talented artists who are, out here doing really, really fabulous work. Jessie Montgomery is a very good friend of mine, and it's amazing to see her getting the type of credit that she so very much deserves, because she's a fabulous violinist and she's an incredible composer. And I'm a huge fan, but we also happen to be friends, but I'm certainly a fan of her work. So, there's so many. Natalie Joachim, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name properly. But she's also fabulous. I've seen her perform her work at the LA Phil, actually at Disney Hall. And we're colleagues and we went to school together. Huge fan of Chris Bowers. Glad to see him getting his just due, especially in the film space. Brilliant composer. And his piano playing is spectacular. John Batiste, I know that for whatever reason, raises so many, red flags about what is classical and what is not classical, or whatever the case may be. But I think that I love what he's doing. And again, I think that kind of what you were speaking to earlier is you're gonna have certain people that, kind of bristle at the notion that, they're gonna challenge the sound, or, what it means to be a classical work or a classical composer, what that looks like, what that sounds like. And it forces hard conversations to happen. And I welcome that.
And hopefully minds and hearts to be opened along the way, because that's the only way for anything to go forward. With this Juneteenth concert, you guys are going to be backing up some of the biggest names in music for this. So how much does their collaboration with you mean to both the musicians who make up Recollective Orchestra, and how much do you hope that translates into more collaborations with artists, on that level, and more awareness in the, by the general audience?
Kind of as I said before, I think that um visibility is so powerful. And while there are people who, have access to these concert halls and will go and, they'll see a concert that's like, oh, I want to go check that out. There's so many more people who are not going out to the concert halls. And so to be able to reach that audience so that they can see it, I think is huge. Um, because I remember when we first did that All the Stars video, and we put it out on Vimeo because we didn't get the clearance for the backing track that we use, because that's owned by Universal Music. So we put it out on Vimeo. Just again, it was a thought piece. This was not like for profit at all. And we just wanted to kind of, as we were inspired by the movie Black Panther, we were like, what would the orchestra of Wakanda look and sound like? And the messages, I mean, the outpouring of messages that we got from that video. I mean, and I'm talking young to old. People, were telling us like I was in tears. Like I was so moved by that. And across the color lines, okay, like we're not just talking about Black musicians. Um, and people who were in their 70s and 80s and 90s saying, I wish I knew that this was possible, because I would have maybe pushed my grandson or my granddaughter, to pursue this. Like, I just didn't know that this was out here, this level of talent was out there. And the reality is so many people, including our own community, haven't seen it before, even still. And I think that this level of visibility is very, very powerful because it'll allow people to see it.
Well, let me finish by asking you about something one of my favorite politicians from the 70s said, because when I came of age, I was so impressed by Shirley Chisholm. And she said, I don't measure America by its achievement, but by its potential.
Yeah.
What is the potential America possesses today, and what does that potential offer Recollective Orchestra?
I think there is a great amount of potential in this burgeoning, like, younger generation. There's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of passion there. Um, and I think what we're starting to see is kind of like the uncovering of of the establishment as we know it. And it's starting to it's starting to be challenged in a real way, not in a covert way, not in a piecemeal way. And I would dare say, like, we're seeing it across the board, not just in the arts sector. And I think that there's a lot of potential there. I think that anytime that we've really seen real change, it's been because of the action and the movement from the youth. They have the energy for it, and there's a certain fearlessness and fire behind them. And if we can empower them to have the stamina to see this thing through, um, I think we're going to see a lot of very, very innovative organizations. I think we're going to see more innovative leadership, hopefully more innovative, leaders of this country, and policies that really make this country, which I think for me is so great, even greater. Because it's hard to hear people say like, oh, America's, on its way out. And I can understand where that thought comes from. But I think that because we have this like melting pot of cultures and people and experiences and perspectives, I think that's what makes us really great. And if we can somehow empower these young thinkers and these young creators and these young innovators to push through some really challenging times, especially coming out of this crazy pandemic, and and really, really take advantage of this shift, I think I'm very hopeful that we will see a much, much better outcome on the other side. And for me, that's the potential that I see and that I'm hoping for.
Well, from your lips to history's ears. Um, yeah, fingers crossed indeed. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Stephanie. Are you all right with my posting this on my YouTube channel?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not at the beach, everyone, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful I'll get there someday soon.
Yeah. Do you even know what beach that is behind you?
No clue. No clue.
It just looks fabulous, though.
Yeah.
I'm about to be on a plane for 10.5 hours. That beach looks a lot more exciting.
Oh my goodness. Well, safe travels.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great show on the night, over the weekend, next weekend, because I'm not going to be here, sadly.
Oh no. Well,
but I would be there in a heartbeat.
Spirit.
I will absolutely be there in spirit because I really love what you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I really, really appreciated this conversation. And yeah, looking forward to the 19th.
Sounds great. Great. Have a great show and safe travels to you as well.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.